Yeah.
Mental Health Mondays ignite the spark. Hope guides each step, even in the dark. New week, new dreams to see. Hope's the key to what's meant to be.
Happy Monday, everyone. How are you on this Monday? It was 50 degrees out today. That's crazy. This is Mental Health Mondays with Hope. I'm Hope, and I hope you're going to have a great week. Today, tonight, it feels like night. It feels like midnight because of the time change. I have back our dear friend, Jeanette Michaels. Bonjour, Jeanette. And every time I just can't help myself. And she is a nursing student and just a lifelong learner of everything and has more knowledge than most people that I know. And tonight we're going to talk about hidden personality disorders and the inability to be understood. And I think it's a great topic. But before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the podcast. Don't just like it, subscribe to the PA Empowerment Network and check out all of the programs that we have. This is on YouTube. So you can go back and watch every episode that you missed or that you want to watch again. That way, if you missed something the first time around, you can always watch it again and take notes or what have you. And then you see up in the corner, Mental Health Mondays with Hope. I do have a Facebook page. So if you would like to check that out, hit the like button there as well. Along the bottom of our screen, we have our 988 hotline number scrolling because a lot of times the topics that we discuss could lead to some sort of triggers or a trauma response. So we want to make sure that you have all the tools that you need if that should occur. So, Jeanette, I am
a very special lady.
Yes, you are. That is for sure. That is for sure. So you have been on the show before, but go ahead and give people just a very quick background about you and where you are in your nursing studies.
Sure. So I am Jeanette Michaels. I am a 59-year-old lady about to graduate from an ADN program at Penn College up in Williamsport. I have been diagnosed previously with bipolar disorder, which as part of my ADN and in my last semester finishing up, I have had to take mental health for nursing. And so, which kind of prompted this show tonight as it relates to personalities, how they are formed, what happens as we form our personality and the personalities that we develop into, because they can drive some maladaptive behavior. I, in the past, and still sometimes do, exercise some maladaptive behaviors in getting my point across. That comes from a number of different things. So, and my personality, and part of that being from bipolar disorder. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited for the next chapter.
Absolutely.
So.
And when is graduation?
December. So pinning is December 19th. Graduation is December 20th.
That is awesome. Congratulations. I'm
Thank
so proud of you.
I'm excited. So. Yeah.
So that is fabulous. I love it. And, I love you. You're an amazing person and you're always so knowledgeable when we have any sort of conversation, whether it's on the show or whether it's in person. So I know you have a lot to talk about, but I do have one question. And that is how do we know if it's a hidden personality disorder versus a trauma response?
So let's first define personality and where it comes from. So personality is kind of our ingrained behaviors. Some of our personality can be genetic and inherited from non-modifiable things, and others of it we've kind of learned through our environment, right? So unless you really become self-aware, and a lot of people don't even realize that their personality is their behavior, or their behavior is from their personality.
Gotcha.
So, personality disorders are classified through what we call the DSM-5, right? So that is our diagnostic criteria for personality disorders and other mental health disorders like bipolar disorder. I am going to throw this out there right now. I am only a nursing student. I am not a diagnostician. What I am sharing tonight is what I have learned through this semester only, and through my own experiences with my own mental health and my bipolar disorder.
Right.
So, you and I were talking before we got on camera about when we go through these classes, you as a social worker, me as a nurse, we start analyzing ourselves, right? And everybody around us, which is always a good thing. But through this, it's been a healing journey for me with that. So I can't really say how we know if it's a hidden personality disorder versus whether it's just our personality.
Gotcha.
We learn our behaviors, right? A lot of our behaviors are learned.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of things that go into personality. Our perceptions of things,
right?
Our attitudes, where we're at with our attitude, and our emotions, right? So all those play a key. If you think maybe you or someone has a hidden personality disorder, and we'll talk a little bit about those tonight, by all means, I personally feel that everyone should see a therapist. We all of us should see a therapist. We all need somebody to talk to.
I agree with you. And, that's maybe because I'm in the field, but, also, there's always a different perspective from someone who's a professional, who has all of that background knowledge and then can help you relate to yourself, relate to others around you, or relate that information to yourself. And that's really important. You can always talk to your friends, but, and your family, but, that's pretty much, that's it. They're either going to be on your side and agree with you 100%, or they're going to, because it's going to be from their experiences and, and their personality, versus talking to a professional who is going to leave that out. They're going to leave anything personal out because that's the job. That's the role.
Right. So, to go back to that question, part of becoming self-aware, for me, it's journaling. It's, you talked about asking your friends, let's talk about your relationships, right? Let's talk about, are your relationships solid relationships, or are you struggling with your relationships? We have 3 different categories of personalities that we talk about in class. And some of those personalities, well, all 3 classifications of those, category A, category B, category C, there's some significant personalities that have developed maladaptive behavior. You look at the paranoid personality disorder, and those people they don't trust anything, right? They don't trust anyone. or your narcissistic personality disorder, they have like this grandiose view of themselves. They think they're like everybody loves them,
right?
And then you have like borderline personality that is similar to bipolar disorder and is oftentimes misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder, where the person is impulsive, or they are in a depression where they're self-mutilating, and these are behaviors that can sometimes be coping skills to other stressors, as you had mentioned in your question. So so that's why it's very important. So if the DSM-5 for each personality gives certain criteria that helps us to diagnose those personality disorders. And a lot of that stems on our relationships with our environment and in our relationships.
Right. Right. So I'm going to let you have the floor. What do you want to start with? You're not going to diagnose me, are you?
Yeah. Now, you and I hope are of different breeds. Like we can't be diagnosed. No, just kidding. Kidding. So let's talk a little bit about our relationships, how our behaviors affect our relationships. Shoot any question you think you haven't, one of the things that I've learned.
When we're talking about relationships, I'm sorry, are we talking about friendship relationships, intimate relationships, or all relationships?
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. That's yeah. So, you can pick out a personality type you'd like to talk about. Pick out, I'm not sure where you want me to drive this, but I really want to get across to people that, for me, with my bipolar disorder, I have been able to learn to manage it and have learned to become self-aware. And I'm still at 59 years old, learning how to appropriately manage my relationships, especially with my husband, my intimate relationships, my work relationships, even sometimes, I have always been very passive and accommodating, right? So where I would just let people walk all over me. And then on the flip side of that, I would do what my kids call playing the victim, where the poor me comes out, right? Well, I'm this way because I was sexually abused, which is in all honesty, is another maladaptive behavior.
Right.
So, so it's kind of the fact of life where it's just a learning process and how to deal with them. So,
right.
But that comes with work. It comes with cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's where I go back to everyone needs someone to talk to, and that'll help, that cognitive behavioral therapy will help you overcome or work on becoming appropriately assertive. I just recently was told that in learning to be assertive, I came across as harsh.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I did not receive that well. And that's again, going back to trying to analyze myself.
Right.
What I need to learn to fix that.
So it's striking a balance, being assertive, but not overbearing.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And, learning how to use I feel.
Right. Right. That's important. So all right. So let's use me. I have this big fun personality, and I'm always happy. And I do bend over backwards for people because that's part of my personality. Is I really enjoy seeing others happy, seeing others succeed. It truly, like when I see someone like with you, you're my friend and you're succeeding, and it makes me very, very happy, and that's genuine. So in relationships, this is what they see. And then, I love doing things for the person that I'm in a relationship with, or love just doing anything with them. I'm not like this, you got to take them out to fancy restaurants, whatever, hanging out, take a hike, whatever, I'm really easy to get along with in that respect. And then, something happens to where the injured hope comes out, and I have a difficult time. That's why I thought this was a great topic. I have a difficult time then getting my point across in the way that I mean it, versus how it's taken by the other person. And then all of a sudden, like this fun hope is gone. And now she comes with all this baggage.
So that is an excellent segue into something I didn't think about talking about, but I'm glad you brought it up, because I just recently did my last clinical. official clinically. I have my 10 hours of preceptorship left to do tomorrow here in Stroudsburg. But I recently, during that clinical, I sat in on a group session, and the therapist talked with the clients about expectations. So that's kind of where those come into play.
Right.
So she drew out a hot air balloon, and she drew lines through the hot, how the hot air balloon has their seams. And in between each seam, you had to write out your expectation.
We lost her.
You lost me?
Lost you.
Well, where'd I go? I'm still here.
Can you check like your microphone and everything on your end? Is your Bluetooth on your phone?
Oh, let me turn my Bluetooth. Hold on.
Oh, you're back.
Okay. That was weird.
All righty. Sorry about that. That was, the gremlins, the ghost in the machine.
So, yeah, you were. I never lost you. I could hear you and everything. But,
okay, I could have sang. Oh, sorry.
So you led me into expectations. So during this group session that I observed in my clinical, she drew out a hot air balloon, and in the seams of the hot air balloon, you were to write your expectations, right? And then underneath the balloon in the basket, you were to put something about are these realistic expectations? Are they not realistic? And I don't remember the exact context of that, but it was like we always kind of have to check our own expectations there, right? And the other person comes with a personality and their own baggage, right? So our expectations might be like, and I'm like you, I'm a very giving person. I'm a very upbeat personality. I've overcome a lot, as have you. And we, like you said, we want to see people succeed, right? So number one, I walked into this mental health facility, and it was very similar to when I was hospitalized with my own suicidal ideations at Muhlenberg. So that kind of brought back some PTSD. Right. And some thoughts of when I was in a very bad place. So everybody's coming with, every one of us has a personality, every single human, and we've all had different experiences through life. So as we bring those together, we kind of have to know what our expectations are. And it goes back to being self-aware and aware of what our expectations are. So, and then I know for me, I have to check it at the door and say, okay, am I helping someone because I want something back out of it? Or am I doing this unconditionally so that I am just happy with the person that I am?
Right.
So that question goes, now I'm losing you. There you go. Nope, you're back. You're back. So we kind of really have to know what our expectations are in a relationship, know that we can meet that person where they are in their own abilities, in their own coping abilities to deal with whatever stressors they are feeling in their life. And then be able to put it all together and say, I feel this way. What can we do so that we're both feeling the way we want to feel?
Right.
Right. And
No,
I can't say I'm always good at practicing this. I'm better at preaching it than I am at practicing it. And my husband will absolutely vouch for that. So
we were talking off camera before, we started that, I'm very self-aware also as I am spouting off, I recognize what I'm doing as I'm still doing it and can't seem to stop myself.
Right.
So that's the part that I need to work on. But along this, and this maybe will be helpful to other, single women like myself, is, I've been on a dating site, and I don't remember how long ago it was that a gentleman asked me, "So what are you looking for in a relationship?" And I'm like, wow. I mean, that's okay. So I'm like, well, so then I made a list and I'm like, this is what I'm looking for. And that was extremely helpful, because then my response was, how about you? And then you are from the very beginning that like what the expectations are of the other person and whether you can meet them. And what I have found is the situations to where now that I felt empowered, so then I've gone into situations and said, hey, what are you looking for in a relationship? And what I've recognized is the ones where the gentlemen don't have a response for me are the ones that I've had the most difficult time with, because I'm trying to read them constantly, engage where they're at. And then I tend to lose myself setting the boundaries, as you talked about.
So, and interestingly enough, those most likely are probably the ones who have not developed their sense of self, and they have not, because, as you learn to heal from your past or work through your baggage, you develop your sense of self.
Right.
Which is part of your personality, is your sense of self.
Right.
If you are not well adjusted in your sense of self, you're going to continue to make the same ill choices that you've made in the past.
Right. And I mean, and I'm thinking of two in particular, when we're discussing this, and definitely the one I know, I mean, I could see that, not having a sense of self, almost having narcissistic tendencies, and but out of insecurity. Woo! I like this. I don't know what happened, but it's pretty cool. And the other one I feel did lose his sense of self a long time ago because of something that occurred in his life. And so this makes sense. Are you sure you don't want to go into psych?
Am I sure that? Yeah, no. So it's not, I will tell you, it's not off the table. I just think there's more baggage that I need to deal with.
I know.
And pardon me while I take a sip there. There's still things that I need to work through, because as we were talking through off camera, one thing that is never okay when you're dealing with clients, and I deal with them in the ER as a tech when I sit with them one-on-one, is for you to transfer your own experiences to them. That is never okay, right?
Right.
So a lot of times in trying to help them, I end up doing that. And it's more of, so I have to be very careful of that. And again, that's me working through more of that's going to be a learning process for me, taking more psych classes and learning how to educate clients as they go through their own process.
Right. Cool. We having technical difficulties? Oh, we're having some technical difficulties, but that's okay. So I feel like I'm like stealing, the show here, not stealing the show, but using my examples. So, tell me one point like right now that you want to get across. Like, what is because this is it's a great topic and we could probably spend weeks on this. So
the one point that I wrote down that is what is your goal, right? So when you as a professional, me as a professional, our goal is always to get to a point where we are functioning at our most effective and highest level that we can function at, right?
Right.
So that our lives are positive, so that our relationships are positive relationships. With positive relationships comes positive self-esteem. With positive relationships comes success, right? When we are in a negative relationship where our personalities with the other person just are not meshing, we can have other problems, other things such as depression or self-harm or suicidal ideations, and those are all things that are not safe. So the most important thing that we need to do is work with our clients to get them to a point where they feel comfortable in their own skin.
Right.
And that is not always an easy task.
Right. And in order to do that, we have to be comfortable in our own skin as the professional.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's a big thing. And that's where, we talk a lot in nursing school about being self-aware. A lot of times we talk about it in being culturally aware. Different cultures come with different personalities. They come with different, views on their healing process. The thing we need to point out is these, whether it's a hidden personality or a stressor or a mental health issue, these are all illnesses, much like diabetes. These are illnesses that can lead to other comorbidities, so it's important that we do away with the stigma of mental health care and that we help people to become the best that they can become.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've talked about it before, but, medicine is pretty much like a disease model, whereas, you fix the problem when it comes to you. Whereas what we do as mental health practitioners, it tends to be more proactive. But wouldn't you see the medical industry, if you want to call it that, taking mental health more serious, whether it's not just the medical industry, but it's government, it's all the funding, it's the insurance companies, that would be more of a proactive approach to disease.
Yes, it would. And, and we talk about not all of these, let me rephrase that. Hidden personality disorders, once you become aware of them, there's a combination of treatment, whether it be pharmacological with medications. There's pharmacological that should be in combination with certain, like I mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
There's other therapies as well that go along with the medication process, right? So they work hand in hand. So yes, you would think we could go down a rabbit hole talking about my opinions on that part of the healthcare system, right? My personal opinion is that it's more money to keep people unhealthy. And again, we could go down a rabbit hole on that.
Right. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure you're right. One of the things that I had a conversation with the president of a local hospital and asked when we were going to get a mental health, like an inpatient behavioral health unit here in my county. And what I was told by this individual is that it's not cost effective, because the reimbursement from insurance, even though there's supposed to be parity, the reimbursement from insurance for mental health is not the same as it is for medical. And that is wrong.
So, and now here's the thing with that, right? And this is where my billing experience is going to come into play. All right. In some aspects, he's right. There are different codes for mental health, and I would go out on a limb in saying they haven't negotiated the correct contracts.
Gotcha.
Okay. And the reason I say this is because I don't know which health in your county. I can guess that it was one of two. In my county, out in the western part of the state, we just built a large mental health facility in Montour County. So My hospital that I work for, if it wouldn't have been cost effective, I can guarantee you they would not have built it. In fact, that's with any, but at some point we have to be responsible to the clients that we serve and say the heck with reimbursement and do what's best for our communities, because mental health issues are becoming more common than, than as common as other health related issues.
Right.
They go hand in, and like I said before, they go hand in hand.
You probably saw me like not roll my eyes, but is it that they're more common or they're more diagnosed than they used to be?
I would say they're more diagnosed than what they used to be.
Right.
We are becoming more aware.
Right.
And we can attribute social media and all sorts of changing times to that.
Right.
But again, I grew up in a time where I was bullied. Okay. I was obese as a child. I was bullied. It goes back to creating a lot of the mental health issues that I myself have. Now we have a whole new level of bullying.
Right.
Right. We have cyberbullying, where, not only are we bullying in school, we didn't have cyberbullying when I was a kid because we didn't have computers.
Right.
So now you meet your friends in school, and I've been down this hole with my granddaughter. She's had her phone taken away. In fact, it was just the other day that my son had a whole conversation. I said, oh, well, yeah, Kaylee doesn't have her phone. Well, why not? Well, she was bullying somebody through her phone. Not okay.
Right.
So, so the punishment there. So here we go back to our personality disorders that we have been talking about. Now we have parents, James nipped that in the butt. He punished her, took her phone away. But we have parents who don't know how to parent. And they don't know, because of their own personality issues and their own maladaptive behaviors, don't know how to follow through or to assert their parenting skills. So it becomes almost like alcoholism. It becomes a cycle.
Right.
So, so again, it's shows like this that make people aware of what's going on. Well, hey, everything Donna talked about today, well, maybe because, hopefully, in fact, I just did a simulation for class on alcoholism. And one of the goals is to help people understand that I really do have an illness, so if we can talk about the symptoms of these problems, okay, so my relationship is failing because I'm exercising XYZ behavior. It's not that I'm a bad person. I just don't know how to change this behavior.
Right.
So if we can make people self-aware, if we can make people self-aware of that, hey, maybe I do have a problem, and then being okay with saying, hey, yeah, maybe I really do have a problem. Maybe I should get help for this. Because I'll be honest with you, I truly wasn't self-aware that I was acting a certain way until my daughter-in-law says, hey, Mom, you're not going to see your grandkids if you don't get help for this.
Right.
So, which that was her no longer enabling my behavior, so as long as we continue to enable the behavior, we're going to continue to be unaware.
Right. And I think also a lot of times, we have conversations like you said, like we were talking about coming off as being told you're coming off as harsh when you were being assertive and saying that you didn't like that didn't feel good. And so, people tell us something about their observations of us and we feel some sort of way. And people are afraid to speak up to their loved ones and let them and say, hey, this is what I'm observing with you, because they're afraid of what the repercussions
Yeah.
might be. So what's a good way to handle that? What's a good way to state that?
So what I have tried to do, again, so here's the thing. When you talk about communication, you're talking about the sender, you're talking about the medium, and you're talking about the receiver, right? You don't control the receiver's perception.
Right.
You don't control the the receiver's attitude, and you don't control their emotions, right? What you have to do is control your own attitude and your own emotion. So being able to very calmly say, I have observed this, I feel this way, and I did not like this, without judgment, in a very calm, rational way. And they still may perceive that as harsh, but they have to own that.
Right.
What you have to do is own where you're at and be okay with where you're at. As long as you're not judgmental, and as long as I'm okay with coming off as harsh, because maybe I did, and I'm okay with that. But again, I don't control their perception of the situation, right? I only control mine. So I read something, respond, don't react.
Yes. We've shared that on several episodes,
yes.
And I still react, and I'm trying to get better at it.
Yeah. And I have learned to simply say, and and again, another one, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Right.
Right.
So, respond, don't react, and be careful how you say things.
And my advice to everyone is, do not do this in text messages.
No. And that is the thing. Written word can be misperceived very easily, because it's very difficult to show emotion through the written word. So, yeah.
Right.
So you have to be very, very careful with the written word.
Right. And you don't know, like you said, the person that's writing it, you don't know what they're like. Maybe I want to respond to something, and I'm in a hurry, and it comes off as being blunt or harsh or cold. And I just wanted to get the message out. And so then you read it and you're like, oh, what up? Why is she being like that? And in my mind, it's like, oh, I want to get this. I want to tell them real quick and this, blah, blah, blah. And then when I read it later, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
So can we go into journaling just for a minute?
Absolutely. Journaling. Yes.
Okay. So talk about journaling. Like, I don't journal. I do and I don't. I don't journal. I'm writing my book. And so
which is a form of journaling, actually.
It is, but it is, but it's very specific. And then I do, because that's a pretty heavy topic. And then to kind of take a break from that, I write poetry and lyrics. So in a sense, I guess it is still journaling, but it's not journaling with intention. There's no intent. So talk about that a little bit. Like, how, if I wanted to actually start journaling, or anyone out there wanted to start journaling, how do you go about it? What would you say?
Just write what you're feeling, write what you're thinking. Here's the thing. One of the things we've learned in class is journaling can be a very effective way of therapy, for a very effective tool for becoming self-aware. It's going to show you what your triggers are to your emotions. It's going to show how you've dealt with those emotions in the past, so that you can work to change. Okay, well, and show you what someone else's reaction was to those emotions.
Right.
So it can be, okay, so, well, I'm looking at my journal. Well, that didn't go over well. How can I fix this going forward? So it's a very effective tool and it's something that my therapist also talks worked through. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to journal. Your poetry and your lyrics, those are a form of journaling. I personally, and again, I'm not a professional. I'm just a nursing student.
Don't say just.
Yes, I know that word is, I know, I get that. But I don't feel there's any right or wrong way. You just sit down and just write what's in your brain.
Right.
It can be word salad for that matter, but it's an effective coping mechanism when you're feeling a certain way. When you want to, let's say we have somebody who wants to cut themselves. Instead of, one of our goals is to keep them safe. XY, Johnny will not self-harm, or will, let's say a nursing a nursing goal might be, Johnny will remain free from self-harm during this admission, right? Okay, so that's a nursing goal, right?
Right.
So, and then we look at our interventions on how we're going to get them there, right? So, one of the interventions might be allowing Johnny to have a piece of paper to just write down words.
Right.
Even if it's just words of it, feeling mad, angry, sad. There's no right or wrong. I don't believe there's any right or wrong way to journal.
Right.
It's been very effective for me to work through my feelings and my responses and my triggers.
Right. I feel like whenever you and I have conversations, whether it's, just the two of us or if it's on on a podcast, it's also like a brainstorming session for me because I learned so much from you. We talked about reacting versus responding. So I'm thinking for me, a good journaling tool when I want to react, because I will tend to do that in text message. That's why I said that. I'm just going to write it in a journal.
Yeah. And right. Exactly. And that is one of the things that my therapist years ago, when I was dealing with my divorce and with child custody issues, said, if you want to, write it out, but don't send it, write it out, right. So when you're mad and you're like super mad because, my ex and his girlfriend could send me over the edge like no other, which is, part of the reasons for my hospitalizations that I've had in the past, write it out because you're getting it off your chest.
Right.
And you're not internalizing it. Right. So I guess as an EMS provider and as somebody who's been through a lot, especially in the last year, I've lost a really close friend. I just lost my aunt. So for me, like with everything I've dealt with in EMS, we tend to compartmentalize things. My son and I my son's a nurse. We just had this conversation the other day. We're used to doing that. We're used to putting it in a box away somewhere. We deal with it however we deal with it. We put it in the box and it's gone.
Right.
Right. Not everybody can do that because they don't have the coping skills to do that.
Right.
And that's what we have to work on. I gave the example of the nursing goals. I gave the example of what might be an intervention, right? Our goal is to give them those coping skills to help them recognize that they don't have the coping skills, and then to help them gain the coping skills. So journaling is a really good coping skill.
Right. Well, I'm going to start that. So you need to keep me on task with that. And let's go back to you had listed 3 classifications of personality disorders.
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Yep.
Okay. So let's go over those again.
All right. So we have our cluster A personalities, right? Those are our odd, eccentric people. So those might be our paranoid people. Those would be the ones who don't trust, right? So those are the ones that if you tell them you're going to do something, you need to follow through and do it. Gotcha. Those are the ones who you want to be very straightforward and honest with, right? And then we have our schizoid or our schiz types. Again, very odd behavior. They may be dressed kind of weird, things we might view as weird. To them, that's normal, but they're just kind of eccentric, right? And then you have your cluster B personalities, right? Your cluster B are your antisocial people. Those are the ones who the rules do not apply to them.
Right.
Those are the ones that are in trouble. The laws mean nothing to them.
Right. And so when we say antisocial, because people don't understand that term, they think it's someone that doesn't like hang out with other people. So, antisocial behavior is not like someone that doesn't like to hang out with other people.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Right. And we did talk about this extensively in class, actually, about how, yes, antisocial is not what we think of. I'm hiding in my room right now, because I'm not being antisocial. That
would be more like asocial.
Yes. Right. So antisocial, these people have no regard for the rules. They would have no regard for your feelings. It would be like me just walking all over you, not caring, just so that I get what I want.
Right.
Right. So those are typically the people that we see who are in trouble with the law. Those are the ones who maybe might be harming a spouse or a girlfriend or something because they just don't care.
Right. So psychopath, sociopath would fall into those.
Maybe, I can't say that I know enough other than what I've learned to actually say yes or no to that question. And then you have your borderline personalities. Again, this one is oftentimes misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder because they are very impulsive. Mm-hmm. These are the people who tend to have suicidal ideations. They tend to self-harm. 1 minute, they're just impulsive, right? They just, they can get into trouble because they are impulsive. They don't understand consequences to the behavior.
Right.
So, and then we have our histrionic. Those are very emotional. They'll cry at the drop of a hat. They are constantly seeking attention. They need to be at the center of attention. Like, and I keep going back to the class because we actually, my instructor had us all role play each one of these personalities. And it was
cool.
It was a very fun class. And each one of us who would, played our part very well, and it was a lot of fun. So the one who played the histrionic, she actually was flirting with the two people that were playing the nurse, and it was fun. It was a fun class. And then you have your narcissist. They, again, no regard for anyone else. They are the best. They're grandiose. Well, I am this. And everybody loves me because this is who I am, just because I am me.
We don't know any narcissists.
None at all. None at all. And then another one I think that gets a little misrepresented is the avoidant, right? Because those are the ones who are hypersensitive. I'll use me for an example because I have very much been, nobody likes me. Nobody ever asked me to go anywhere. Nobody likes me. Why would I put myself in that situation? Nobody likes me. Right. So and I've been that. That's what I classify as playing the victim.
Right.
And then you have, and we, I think, have in layman's terms, we generalize this next personality as codependent.
Okay.
Or dependent, actually. They have a strong need to be cared for. Those are the ones who must be in a relationship. And I use this a lot with women. And I'm going to say this, and a relationship does not define who you are. However, a dependent person cannot do anything without asking somebody else's opinion. They need that guidance to move on.
Right.
And those are the ones that fall into, I feel like those are the ones who fall into the abusive relationships because they need that validation, right? Because they can't self-validate, because they've never given that coping skill to self-validate.
Right.
And then you have your obsessive people. This is the businesswoman who has everything is regimented. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I could not deviate from this schedule because that's just chaos. They are high, and they tend to be very high strung, very tight, very closed off, because everything has to be in its place. They tend to be the ones who put their kids they thrive on perfectionism. So their kids have to be perfect at everything. They have to be, everything just has to fall in line in how they see it in their mind.
Right.
And the slightest pin that drops could set them into a spiral if it's not just perfect.
Right. But wouldn't you say, or could you say that we all kind of exhibit some of these at different times? And so there tends to be a spectrum of all of these, because I know I've exhibited some of those behaviors, and I don't feel that I fall into some of those different classifications.
I wished I had my notes with me. I'm actually in Stroudsburg, not at home. I don't have my notes with me. So I actually, at some point, and you may have seen it on my Facebook, Hope, I actually had taken a picture of those notes, and I said, gosh, I never knew that I fell into so many different categories of this, right? I don't know if you remember that post.
Yes.
But yeah, and I think we do. And I think, and again, I'm not, I'm a nursing student. I'm not a professional. I am a professional. I shouldn't say that, but I'm not a therapist. But I think we all can have tendencies, and I think we can waver in and out of different personalities depending on how we need to cope with certain situations, because that's what I've observed in myself.
Right.
And so that goes back to our defense mechanisms, right? That goes back. Our ego is our defense mechanism. So that goes back to our defense mechanisms and how we are coping with different situations.
Right. Wow. So I just want to touch on again, there's so much we need to do this again, because we've already been on for almost an hour. So just one more. We only have a few minutes I want to go back to, because I think it's it's really important. Let's talk about the comorbidities, because this was called hidden personality disorder. So that means that until we become more aware of ourselves and our that the stigma of mental health dissipates, and these topics are talked about more and explained more, we don't know we have them.
Right.
And then we're having all these other side effects of it, which are medical. So let's talk about that.
Whenever somebody comes into crisis, the first thing we have to do is rule out a medical problem. Vitamin D deficiency, hypothyroidism, diabetes. If you're in a diabetic crisis, they can all contribute to behavioral problems. In order to appropriately treat a mental health patient, we have to first rule out those medical problems, right? So that's a good point that you brought up. Yes. Now, going into these hidden personalities, if we are not self-aware, we could be having what we call a somatic issue. You may be having back pain. You may be having belly pain. You may be having, those may be somatic signs of something that is going on mentally. They're very real to the client, so once we have ruled out that there's nothing else physical, so when you look at your hierarchy of needs, the basis of your needs are your physical needs. So we have to make sure those are met first. Then we move up the ladder into the triangle, to the top of the triangle, right? So, yes, that you can have these comorbidities, physical comorbidities. We've talked about this in the other show that I did with you, the obesity with the mental health. It can lead, mental health puts a stress on your body that can create these physical problems. So,
cortisol.
Cortisol, yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because yes, there is Cushing's disease is a big one. We can see that, and I'm at the risk of offending my husband here. I'm going to bring this up because both my husband and I grew up in abusive homes, and I can see that. And I went to a physician appointment with him one time, and I said, hey, I think we need to, and this was when I was first in nursing school, when I first found out what Cushing's really was. So I think we need to test his cortisol levels, because here's why. When your body is under physical stress, be it perceived, be it reality, certain things happen in your body. One of those things is the cortisol level raises so that you go into what's called fight or flight response, right? You're either going to stand up and fight, and you do that because of all of the hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol, all of those are released. Things change with your body. Your pupils dilate, your heart starts racing, the blood flow to your internal organs happens so that you can deal with that fight response. So when you are in a life, like from the time you were little to the time you were an adult, your cortisol level is constantly high. What that does, we talk about Cushing's, what that does is, and I see this in my husband, you get these birdie little ankles, you get this hump on your back, and you get excessive hair growth on your back, you get a pot belly, you get a moon face. Those are all signs or symptoms of Cushing's.
Wow.
So I remember sitting in this appointment, and one of the things that I'm working through in my marriage is both of us getting therapy to deal with these because both of us have, no lie, I have maladaptive behaviors. My husband has maladaptive behaviors. My kids have maladaptive behaviors. We all have dealt with it.
We should all get t-shirts.
Right? Look, I love it, love it. So, but yeah, and I think, 10, what was the statistics I read tonight? 10 to 20% of the general population have some sort of personality disorder. That goes up to 40 to 45% in people with mental illness.
Right.
So, that being said, that's contributing. And it's like you said, up until now, it wasn't diagnosed as much because we weren't as aware of it. We're more aware of it now and the things it does to your body. So there are, to go back to the comorbidities, it does contribute a lot to a lot of the comorbidities. It can contribute to obesity, which leads to diabetes, which leads to hypertension, which leads to coronary artery disease. All of those things, it can contribute to all of those.
Absolutely. Wow. You, as always, are extremely informative. Is there one last, because we're gonna sign off here this Monday. Please subscribe, like. We will share this link so that way you can watch it over and over again and learn as much as you can from this. What would you like to close with?
Happy holidays to
Oh,
everybody.
thank you. You as well.
Thank you. And if you're, please utilize the resources that Hope has floating on the bottom of the page. You are not alone. There is help out there for you. You are worth it, and you are special, and you are worth getting the help that you need. So please utilize the resources that Hope has provided for you.
That is beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your own life experiences, because I feel that's very, very important to help people, get through whatever they're going through in life, is to have more people like you who are willing to share that very, very intimate details of their lives in order to help others. So you're going to be an amazing nurse, and I'm so very proud of you. So thank you, Miss Johnette
Thank
Michael.
you, Hope, for having me.
Soon to be RN.
Yep. A few more days.
We'll see. We'll have you back on. We'll see you soon.